Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Sanhedrin. We are up to Perek Zayin Mishnah Vav. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'ilu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Ranbai, Eliyahu ben Burchai Israelov, Chana ben Miriam, Sason ben Rai, Yoshua ben Shifra, Menuchatam beGan Eden, Amen. And Avdi ben Chaim lechaim b'derefua shenemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Betoch Shachol Yisrael, and Achlama Mera Binyamin Od Sion Chai ben Dvorah. The next sin listed in Mishnah 4 that carries the punishment of execution by stoning is the topic of Mishnah Vav. Ha'oved avodah zara, someone who worships an idol. Echad ha'oved, the punishment of stoning applies whether he worships an idol in the way it is usually worshipped. He didn't act that the followers of that idol had established as a way of worshipping the idol. V'echad ha'zovech, v'echad ha'mkatev, v'echad ha'mnasech, v'echad ha'mishtachaveh, or whether he slaughters an offering, burns an offering, meaning it burns an animal or its parts or spices as done in the temple, pours wine or sprinkles blood, or bows down to it, even if that is not the way it is usually worshipped. We learn from verses in the Torah that a person is executed for worshipping an idol in any of these four ways, even if its followers do not usually use that form of worship. The Torah regards these activities, slaughtering an offering, burning an offering, pouring wine, more harshly than others because they are set aside for the worship of God in the temple. We slaughter offerings to God there, burn parts of offerings and the spices of the Ktoret, and pour wine on the altar and apply the blood of offerings to the side of the altar. The fourth activity listed here, bowing, is also treated harshly, although it is not considered a temple service because it is a great display of honor. V'chadam kabelo alav la'eloah, or whether he accepts it upon himself as a god, va'omer lo eliyata, or whether he says to the idol, you are my god. The difference between the last two cases is as follows. A, when he is not in front of the idol, he says, such and such an idol is my god. B, when he is in front of the idol, he says to it, you are my god. Either way, he is guilty of idol worship, even though he only spoke and did not take any action. Aval amgapef. However, if someone hugs an idol, v'amnashek, kisses it, v'amchabetz, sweeps the floor in front of it, v'amrabetz, sprinkles water on the dirt around it so the dust will not blow on it, v'amrachetz, washes it, hasach, rubs it with oil, hamalbish, dresses it, v'aman'ir, or puts shoes on it, over belota, say he transgresses a negative commandment. The Torah states in Shemot chapter 23 verse 24, you shall not worship them, but is not put to death unless that is the way it is usually worshipped. Anoder bishmo, if someone makes a vow in the name of an idol, for instance, all fruit is forbidden to me in the name of such and such an idol. For example, he says, all fruit is forbidden to me as though it were an offering to such and such an idol. V'amkayem bishmo, swears in its name, for instance, I swear by such and such an idol that a certain event happened. Over belota, say he transgresses a negative commandment, but is not put to death. It is written in Shemot chapter 23 verse 13, you shall not mention the name of other gods. So he violates, he transgresses a negative commandment, but is not put to death. Now the Mishnah taught that one is executed for worshipping an idol in the way it is usually worshipped. Two extreme examples are given. Someone who defecates in front of the idol, Baal Peor, is executed because that is its usual form of worship. Hazorek even lemarkulis Zohi avodato, and someone who throws a stone at the idol Markulis is executed because that is its usual worship. Even if he defecated in front of Baal Peor or threw a stone at Markulis because he intended to disgrace or damage it, he must bring a sin offering like one who worships an idol by mistake without intent to sin. And that is then of Mishnah Vav. The next sin listed in Mishnah 4 is someone who gives his child to Molech. This was a Canaanic practice performed for the sake of a statue called Molech. Its followers did not regard Molech as a god, therefore serving Molech is not idol worship. Mishnah 4 lists worshipping idols and giving one's child to Molech as separate sins, which implies that the latter was not a form of idol worship. It was simply a ceremony performed by the Canaanites. Nevertheless, the Torah considers the ceremony so depraved that one who performs it is punished with stoning, as the Rav says in Mishnah 4. After priests lit a fire in front of the statue, a father would hand his child over to the priest and they would return the child to the father. The father would then pass the child over the fire from one side to the other without burning him, as the Ram writes in Nechot Avodah Zarah chapter 6 halakha 3. Mishnah Zayin elaborates upon this sin. Hanoten mizaro lamolech, someone who gives one of his children to Molech, and no chayav ad sheimsor lamolech v'yavir ba'esh, he is not liable to execution unless he hands the child over to the priest of Molech and then passes the child through the space over the fire. Masar la Molech v'lo evir ba'esh. If he handed the child over to the priest of Molech but did not pass him through the space over the fire, hevir ba'esh v'lo masar la Molech. Or if he passed the child through the space over the fire but did not hand him over to the priest of Molech, eno chayav, he is not liable ad she'imsor la Molech ve'avir ba'esh, unless he hands him over to the priest of Molech and passes him through the space over the fire. Some manuscripts of the Mishnah do not include the final section of Masar Molech v'avir ba'esh. The Mishnah explains the next two sins listed in Mishnah 4, namely one who practices Ov or Yideoni. Baal Ov, someone who practices Ov, Zepitom, this is a fortune teller who takes a skull, burns incense for it, and asks it questions about the future which it answers. Hamdabel Mishachyo, or this is someone who raises the spirit of a dead person which then speaks from his armpit. Videoni, a person who practices Yideoni. Zamdabel Bepiv, this is someone who puts a bone from an animal called Yadao in his mouth, and the bone speaks from his mouth. Yeah, the animal was called Yadua, as the Rav says, Yadoa or Yadua. He would put a bone from an animal called Yadua in his mouth, and the bone speaks from his mouth. That's Yidoni. Hare elu biskila, these people are punished by stoning. Vanishal b'hem ba'asara, and someone who asks them a question about the future, which he wants them to answer by using the methods of Ov or Yidoni, transgresses a prohibition of the Torah states in Vaikra chapter 19 verse 31, you shall not turn to those who practice Ov Yidoni, but is not put to death. And that is on Abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.